Hey guys, it is Nick here, and today we will be getting into Pamela and the Commonwealth and their visiting of the Sanctuary and Sophia, and how Sophia will react seeing Pamela and the Commonwealth enter her territory. This is part 24 of What If Sophia Joined Negan. Once again, we are approaching the end of this series here, and it's been a ride. But anyways, let's get into it. So, for the Sanctuary as a whole, Carol and Mika, who's pretty much fully grown at this point, have adjusted well to the life of being around the Saviors and getting accustomed to it all. Sophia is usually found in the quarters of where Negan's bedroom was, where Negan's chained to one of the walls as a walker, obviously, and Sophia mourns him every single day. And it would honestly be heartbreaking to see this, while also a little bit, weird because it's a walker. But then again, the governor was the same way about Penny, so not really that weird. Anyways, Shane is still around as a walker, and he is kept to the fence with all the remainders. Sort of like how Simon was whenever Negan killed him, and then we never saw him again. So he was likely put down. But Shane, no, he was put there because he killed Negan. Basically as a warning. Sophia made sure of that. Speaking of him, Sophia has finally rekindled the mother-daughter relationship that I'm sure at this point a lot of us would like to see between herself and Carol, because Carol and Mika being around for this long, Sophia would almost get like a half-sister relationship with Mika. It'd be very nice to see. Anyways, Pamela and a few of the Commonwealth soldiers, because I don't think she'd bring a whole army with her just to check out one place, because I'm pretty sure at this point of the Commonwealth's entry, that would just be left to Lance to take care of most of the army. But anyways, Pamela and a good amount of Commonwealth soldiers, I'd say 10, arrive at the Sanctuary. Saviors stop them dead in their tracks at the gates and holster their weapons to say, you ain't coming in here until you put those weapons down or you state your business. And this would be an excellent story field, I'd have to say, between the Saviors and the Commonwealth. But Pamela, she's not gonna get all crazy and frickin' tell her men to fire or anything. She's not that crazy yet. Not this early into her entry, especially because this is 2 seasons earlier than when we first met all the Commonwealth. But she does say who she is, where she's from, and why she's here. Sophia then tells her men to back off and that she's going to talk to Pamela alone. She then states that whoever told her about this place, her, whatever, she doesn't care. Coming here, it was specifically, she had put off this community for a reason. She doesn't want to be involved in any other communities or anything like that. She doesn't care, she doesn't want it, and it was for a reason. So whoever did this, why ever they came here, she doesn't care. She just wants them gone. And she has no interest in taking sides with them or getting any of their help. This is her home, and she is going to see to it that it gets the care that it needs by her standards and hers alone. She looks dead in the eyes of Pamela and means this with every fiber of her being, and says that if she and her men don't leave, things are going to get hairy. Now, Pamela, once again, this is early stage Pamela, 2 seasons earlier, as I've said, so I don't think she'd be as reckless to try and pick a fight, especially considering the fact that she has nowhere near the numbers to even penetrate half of the Saviors. Even though a lot of the leader-type Saviors are gone, they still have way more than enough numbers to outmaneuver Pamela and the guards that she has. So, they just leave. Much to Pamela's chagrin, because she would have really liked to study the Sanctuary more. Instead, she goes to the hilltop, where Maggie and Glenn are leaders. And speaking of other communities, I've already discussed that Jadis would be taken care of by Rick and Sophia, but meanwhile, while this is all happening, Lance takes a good amount of soldiers to check out the kingdom, where Ezekiel is still king, and really, as I've done before in at least a few other stories, hasn't really lost anybody. So he'd still be keeping that whole king facade and everything. And I think this would really intrigue Lance, but also, it'd be a bit silly for him to have to see, too. And even though, once again, 2 seasons early, I feel that Toby would still be introduced as a character. Whether or not we'd still get that whole home with all the guys and the guy with the heads and everything, I feel that might happen, but it wouldn't be as confrontational here, because Negan's not around. So, whether or not that happens, it doesn't really have any correlation to the story. Another thing that wouldn't happen is Sebastian threatening Daryl and making them go out to get money for him, because Sebastian is just a little kid still by this point. We haven't even had a 6-year time skip yet. So that wouldn't happen at all. Nothing close to that. We also wouldn't get the Commonwealth going to the hilltop, or at least it wouldn't be to check out any signs of murder, because Leah nor the Reapers haven't been introduced yet. So if the Commonwealth were to go there, well, Pamela's already going there, but if Lance were to visit, it would be just a visit. Nothing more, really. Mercer and Princess would also have their little relationship, because even though it's earlier, I still feel that would happen regardless. And gets a little bit weird recognizing how much early into the Commonwealth we're getting into, but I still feel that many of the aspects would play out the same way regardless of how early it would happen. And we would also still get the whole Eugene and Max thing, because as I said, Eugene still has that whole fake Stephanie and then the whole Max situation. Another one of those unchanged events that I would feel would happen regardless. Also, as I've discussed, Abraham really gets a nod to his character development, becoming the next general in line with Mercer, and because of this huge shift in power, the noticeabilities of Lance and Pamela's, treachery and being all crazy and all that, this comes up way sooner than the original Commonwealth storyline, and it's already sooner because 2 seasons. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's just that noticeable. And suffice it to say, this puts Lance and Pamela behind bars. Say this was season 11. This would be happening pretty much right when the Commonwealth's getting introduced to Alexandria. So, yeah, just put that in retrospect to this story. Anyways, with all that out of the way, bunch of details, we then cut to Maggie, because even though the 6-year time skip hasn't happened, I feel that with nothing standing in her way, no vengeful thoughts, no anything, this or that, this would make her want to build the community with Georgie sooner, much sooner. And with Glenn and little Herschel around, well, little Herschel was around regardless, but with Glenn around, this would definitely be a definite better send-off than an off-screen Maggie left kind of deal. Herschel and Beth, who are still around, wave them goodbye and wish them good luck. And yeah, both of them are still around too, but Herschel is definitely getting to that point where he's barely able to get out of bed properly. But anyways, we then finally get the 6-year time skip, and Yamika's group is pretty much just directed right into the Commonwealth, because by this point, Lance and Pamela would have been behind bars for a substantial amount of time, and we would be inching closer and closer to the original Commonwealth storyline. And Sebastian, finally growing into the mischievous freaking jerk that we know him for in the original story, would finally start to show his true colors and, jerk. And with his mother behind bars, this would both make him, kind of not caring and angry at the same time. It would be very weird to say how he would feel about that. But with Abraham and Mercer, the literal leaders of the Commonwealth and the communities, besides, Rick and obvious other ones, yeah, Sebastian, kind of too little too late for, acting like a little, spoiled little brat. But there's something we need to discuss. Deanna is still around here. So, as I said before, her involvement would help Pamela, but I don't think that it would shake the whole foundation of her character and how crazy she would eventually come to be. But she would convince Rick and Mercer and Abraham to maybe let them go. It has been 6 years. Think about that. And eventually, with enough persuasion and pretty much just persuasion, Sebastian, who would have just been put in the cell, and Pamela and Lance are let out and are forced to change their ways. And Deanna puts it in special interest for Spencer and Nicholas to look after Sebastian. And herself and the remainder of the leaders, the big ones, take care of Lance and Pamela. Meanwhile, at the sanctuary, just a little quick detail here, we see Carol and Gavin get into a little relationship, something that I myself never thought about until now. Usually I pair Carol with Axel or, Ed or Ezekiel, but here gets a little savior romance. And we also get Sasha getting sort of an advisor to Abraham, so to speak, because they are together. And to not give Sasha something good in this aspect would be kind of pointless. So, yeah. And we also get a very nice nod to Martinez, who is still freaking around. He becomes the official third in command to the Commonwealth. Why I didn't give this to Sasha? I feel that I could have, but I really wanted to up Martinez's character to a degree, and I feel that Sasha getting more of like an advisor role to Abraham is just more touchable than like Martinez getting that, for example. Now we're going to talk about how the rules of the old Alexandria ways fit into how the Commonwealth and everything is organized, especially with the characters. Alright, pay attention to this. For Andrea, Lori, Beth, and Tyrese, they take on like a council type role, sort of like how we saw at the prison. For finding people, we leave that to the jobs of Eric, Aaron, Sherry, Dwight, Daryl, and Merle. They're all in charge of looking for people, just as Aaron, Eric, and Daryl did in the original story, and how Merle touched up on that in many of my other stories and stuff. We just have Dwight and Sherry as an add-on. As for medicine, doctors, the whole medical aspect, we have Olivia and Denise who are still around, along with Terrell, Sadiq, Enid, and Carl, who still has 2 eyes. And many of these characters still being present. Now, something also to note, this is kind of ironic and poetic, Big Tiny, pretty much the only prisoner that is still alive. Surprisingly, I wasn't expecting this. And guess what job he gets? He gets to be in charge of looking after any confined inmates and prisoners. So it's literally a reverse of what he had to live with. So, like I said, kind of ironic and poetic there that Big Tiny gets that. But now with all that out of the way, we have finally entered the point of introducing the Whisperers into the story. But with the Commonwealth and everything that's happened up to this point, how do you think the Whisperers will even come close to affecting the story? Do you think that with everything that's happened, it will matter more in the long run and make things more dangerous? Or do you think that it's going to be a complete washout and the Whisperers will literally mean absolutely nothing? With all that out of the way, that's where we leave things for the moment. A lot to impact on this part because it is approaching the finale. So I want to touch upon every single little aspect of the story that we have left to make it truly something. because you guys seem to really like this story. Definitely has gotten a lot more love than I thought it would at the beginning. That's a lot of my stories. But I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. Hope you guys are enjoying the story, and I will see you guys next time.